Today I'm going to present the 2018 Hong Kong crime thriller project Gutenberg. The film opens in the present day. Yuen Man has just been arrested and extradited from Thailand to Hong Kong. He's connected to a series of murders and armed robberies, all linked back to an enormous quantity of extraordinarily well-made counterfeit US $100 bills that have been circulating around the world for years, so realistic that banks and even experts cannot tell them apart from real currency. Inspector Ho and her team interrogate Yuen Man in a police station, pressing him to reveal the identity of the man behind all of it, a shadowy figure the underworld only knows by the codename Painter. At first, Yuen Man is uncooperative, giving vague or evasive answers. Enough for Yuen Man, who by this point in the story is a nationally famous and respected artist, arrives with a lawyer to try to help him. She and her legal team negotiate a deal with the Deputy Commissioner of Police, who happens to be Inspector Ho's father, if Yuen Man agrees to fully cooperate. Describing Painter and confessing everything he knows about the gang's history, he will be granted witness protection instead of a life sentence. During his opening interrogation, there's an important exchange worth mentioning. Inspector Ho asked Yuen Man directly who Painter really was and where he could be found. Yuen Man answered evasively, saying only that Painter was a ghost, a man who left no trace and who could be standing right next to you without you ever knowing it. Ho pressed him further, asking why he was protecting a man who had clearly used him. Yuen Man simply looked away and said nothing. It's a small moment, but looking back on it after the twist, this exchange takes on a completely different meaning. Yuen Man accepts the deal. From this moment on, the film shifts into an extended flashback. Yuen Man begins narrating his life story to Inspector Ho, scene by scene, and almost the entire rest of the movie, all the way until the final act is presented to us as this flashback, told entirely from Yuen Man's own point of view and in his own words. I want you to keep that detail in mind because it becomes extremely important later when we get to the twist. The flashback begins in the 1990s in Vancouver, Canada. Yuen Man and Yuen Man are shown as a young couple, both struggling painters trying to break into the art world, living a modest, almost poor lifestyle together, painting side by side in a small shared studio. Over time, Yuen Man's paintings begin attracting real attention. Gallery owners praise her originality and her emotional honesty. Yuen Man, on the other hand, is repeatedly rejected. Art critics tell him that although his technical skill is remarkable, his paintings are just skillful imitations of famous masters, that he has no true voice of his own as an artist. This rejection hits Yuen Man hard, especially as he watches Yuen Man's career take off, while his own goes nowhere, and money becomes tighter and tighter for the couple. Out of desperation, Yuen Man starts using his exceptional technical talent for something illegal, forging documents, and eventually forging paper currency in order to make ends meet. This decision marks the beginning of his slow pull into organized crime. There's a painful scene between the two of them around this time. Yuen Man asked Yuen Man why he kept comparing himself to other painters instead of simply painting what he felt. Yuen Man answered bitterly that talent without recognition was worthless, that it didn't matter what he felt if nobody wanted to see it. Yuen Man told him that she believed in him regardless, but Yuen Man, ashamed of his failures, started pulling away from her emotionally even before he physically left for Painter's world. It's through this underground forgery work that Yuen Man is first introduced to Painter, a mysterious, elegant man who runs an international counterfeiting operation. Painter recognizes that Yuen Man's forgery skills are rare and valuable, so he recruits him personally, offering him money and a place in his crew. Yuen Man decides to leave Canada and Yuen Man behind, telling himself and telling us in narration that this will only be temporary, that he will earn enough money quickly, and then return to Vancouver to win Yuen Man back, and finally start a real life with her. When Painter first approached Yuen Man, he asked him a simple question. Did he want to keep being an imitator that nobody respected, or did he want to become someone whose work was so perfect that even experts couldn't tell it was fake? Yuen Man asked what exactly Painter was offering. Painter told him that he was offering him the one thing the art world had denied him, to finally be the best in the world at something, even if the world could never know his name. Once Yuen Man leaves for Painter's world, we're introduced to the rest of the gang. There's Uncle Xing, an older, experienced printing specialist, Li Wing Chit, who is responsible for sourcing paper and chemical materials, and several other technicians, each responsible for a different part of the counterfeiting process, such as ink formulas, paper texture, engraving plates, and hidden security features. Painter runs this operation almost like a master craftsman running an art workshop. He repeatedly tells his crew things like a genuine work of art, and by extension a genuine forgery, cannot tolerate a single flaw. Every tiny detail must be perfect. A large part of the middle section of the film is dedicated to showing, in careful, almost loving detail, how the gang perfects its forgery techniques over time, testing paper fibers under UV light, replicating the exact green color of American currency ink, practicing the fine engraving lines by hand. Their single biggest technical challenge, and eventually their proudest achievement, is cracking the security features of the newly redesigned 1996 US $100 bill, which had just introduced advanced anti-counterfeiting technology like a color-shifting ink and a watermark. After a long process of trial and error and repeated failures, the gang finally succeeds in producing fake $100 bills that are, for all practical purposes, indistinguishable from real ones. The film lingers on this achievement almost lovingly, with slow-motion shots of freshly printed bills fluttering through the air, and close-ups of the crew's hands checking every tiny detail under bright lamps, framing counterfeiting itself as a genuine art form rather than simple crime, which fits the film's larger idea that Yuen Man is, in his own twisted way, finally becoming the great artist he always wanted to be, just not in the way he originally imagined. Alongside this technical success, though, we start to see a darker, more dangerous side of Painter. In order to fund the operation and get hold of certain rare printing materials, including specific paints and chemicals, the gang plans and carries out an armored truck robbery. What is supposed to be a relatively clean, controlled heist turns violent during the ambush, the security guards resist, and Painter and his men end up brutally killing them, going far beyond what Yuen Man had expected or agreed to. This event disturbs Yuen Man deeply. For the first time, he begins to understand that Painter isn't simply a clever, business-minded criminal, but a man who is genuinely capable of extreme, almost casual violence, someone who can kill without hesitation the moment things don't go according to plan. From this point forward, Yuen Man is caught in an increasingly uncomfortable position, torn between loyalty and gratitude toward the man who gave him a new life and a real income, and a growing sense of fear and moral disgust at what the gang is actually doing. Later in the story, needing more resources and materials, Painter's crew travels to Thailand to negotiate with a local warlord known simply as the General, who controls territory in the Golden Triangle region. During this trip, it's revealed that Painter has a deeply personal motive for being there. He blames the general for the death of his own father years earlier, and this whole trip is, in part, a mission of revenge. Negotiations quickly break down, and this leads to one of the film's biggest and most stylish action sequences, staged very much in the spirit of a classic John Woo film. Painter, wielding two pistols at once, and his men launch a full-scale assault on the general's heavily armed compound, and in an explosive slow-motion sequence full of gunfights and chaos, they destroy it completely. During the confusion of the attack, Yuen Man rescues a woman named Ing Zo Ching, who worked as the general's personal accountant and who is badly wounded in the crossfire. She survives her injuries, and soon afterward, having nowhere else to go, she joins Painter's gang. This is where the plot starts to get genuinely twisted. As part of the gang's operations, Cao Ching is given a fake passport under a new identity, the name Yuen Man. At around the same time, back in his personal life, Yuen Man learns some painful news. The real Yuen Man has become a hugely successful, celebrated artist in the outside world, and that she is now engaged to be married to her own art agent, Painter. Always alert and controlling, senses that Yuen Man is becoming emotionally weak and distracted, that his lingering feelings for Yuen Man could put the whole criminal operation at risk. So he devises a cruel loyalty test. He orders Yuen Man to personally kill Yuen Man's fiancée as proof that Yuen Man has truly let go of his past life and is fully committed to the gang. When Painter gave Yuen Man this order, he asked him coldly whether he still thought of himself as belonging to his old life in Vancouver. Yuen Man tried to argue that killing an innocent man had nothing to do with loyalty to the gang. Painter replied that in their world, love for anyone outside the gang was itself a weakness, and that Yuen Man needed to prove once and for all which lie he truly. Yuen Man refuses to carry out the order. His refusal sets off a violent chain reaction, and in the fallout, several people end up dead. In the chaos, Yuen Man and Cao Ching manage to escape together. Painter's presence still looms over him even afterward. At one point, Yuen Man catches a brief, unsettling glimpse of Painter in a crowded street, a reminder that he can never truly get away. Eventually, this chain of events leads to Yuen Man being arrested by the Thai authorities on counterfeiting charges, which brings us right back to where the film began, his arrest and extradition to Hong Kong. By this point in his confession, Yuen Man has told Inspector Ho almost everything, or at least everything he says he remembers. Based on his detailed description, the police artist draws up a facial composite sketch of the elusive Painter. Now we arrive at the twist that the entire film has been building toward, and it's the single element that most people remember and discuss after watching this movie. Yuen Man and the woman he has been referring to as Yuen Man throughout the interrogation are brought together by the police for one final, tense meeting meant to be a supervised exchange of truths between them. During this scene, a detective examining the case notices something strange. The old police sketch matching the description of Painter, the one built from Yuen Man's own words, actually looks exactly like Yuen Man himself. During this final meeting, the woman asked Yuen Man quietly if he had ever truly loved her, or if he had only ever loved the idea of Yuen Man. Yuen Man couldn't answer answer her directly, and it's exactly at this moment of hesitation that the detective standing nearby compares the old sketch to Lee Man's face and freezes, realizing the resemblance. And here comes the big reveal. Painter never existed as a separate real person at all. Lee Man himself is the true criminal mastermind behind the entire counterfeiting empire, and the story we, the audience, have just spent almost 2 hours watching, told to his flashbacks, was really his own version of events, told from an unreliable point of view in which he split his own personality into two separate characters, an innocent, reluctant, sympathetic Lee Man, and a cold, ruthless, violent painter figure who supposedly forced him into every terrible act. He did this, we realized, to protect himself, into every terrible act. He did this, we realized, to protect himself and to shift the blame during his police confession. At the same time, we also learned the full truth about the woman we believe to be Yuen Man. The real Yuen Man has actually been living quietly and peacefully in mainland China this entire time, with absolutely no connection to the gang or its crimes. The woman who has been by Lee Man's side, the one we thought was Yuen Man, is in fact Saw Ching, the accountant he rescued back in Thailand. She had undergone cosmetic surgery specifically to resemble Yuen Man physically, because Lee Man had been using her all along as a living substitute, a physical stand-in for the woman he had never truly stopped obsessing over. Sao Ching's own hidden betrayal is revealed at this same moment. It turns out that it was actually her, not some unnamed member of the gang, who killed Yuen Man's fiancée, and it was also her who secretly reported Lee Man to the Thai police, which is what led directly to his arrest. Despite this betrayal between them, once Lee Man is imprisoned, he secretly writes letters to Saw Ching, asking for her forgiveness and pleading with her to help him escape. She had secretly been steering the boat in slow circles the entire time, deliberately keeping them trapped within Hong Kong's waters, close enough that the police are eventually able to locate and surround them. Lee Man asked her, in disbelief, why she would trap them both instead of simply letting them escape. Sao Ching answered that there was nowhere left on Earth for them to actually go, and that she would rather end things on her own terms than keep pretending to be someone she was not for the rest of her life. She tells him that she is simply exhausted, that she cannot keep living forever as a copy, a substitute permanently standing in another woman's shadow just to be loved by him. As the police close in and surround the boat, Sao Ching detonates hidden explosives that she had planted, killing herself and, it's implied, Lee Man along with her, in one final dramatic explosion that brings their whole twisted relationship to an end. In the very last scene of the film, Inspector Ho travels to mainland China to personally visit the real Yuen Man, in order to inform her that Painter is dead and that the case is officially closed. But Yuen Man reacts with a strange, cold indifference, showing almost no emotional response to the news at all. When Inspector Ho shows her an old photograph of Lee Man and asks whether she recognizes him, Yuen Man calmly and simply explains that he was nothing more than a neighbor from many years ago. Ho asked her, somewhat surprised, if she was certain that this man had never meant anything more to her. Yuen Man answered that whatever obsession he apparently felt for her was only ever a one-sided fantasy on his part, an illusion of a love story that, in reality, was never returned. With that quiet, almost dismissive final line, the film ends, revealing that this entire dramatic, violent, decade-spanning saga of counterfeiting, murder, and revenge was, underneath everything, built around one man's unrequited, obsessive love for a woman who barely remembered him.